Elections are coming, so here's a riddle for you. How can you tell if a politician is lying? The answer is, his or her lips are moving. Okay, so the joke's a little old, but it's pretty close to the truth, isn't it? History has shown that all leaders have played Pinocchio at some point in their careers. It's just that some lies are more palatable or at least more forgivable than others. For example, this.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Versus this.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
But just because they have been doing it, does it make it okay for politicians to continue lying? In this day and age, most would argue that being honest and transparent is the key to being a good leader. David Brooks, who's an op-ed columnist for the New York Times, believes that voting for someone with bad private morals is like setting off on a battleship with awesome guns and a rotting hull. There's a good chance you're going to sink before the voyage is over. That kind of thinking probably explains how this guy, like him or not, made a brief comeback after owning up to a sex scandal.
I would like to clarify that I am the man in the stick.
Of course, you can always argue that he had to own up. But I bet you can name more than one politician who's lied through their teeth even after getting caught red-handed. As a general rule, you and I both know that it would be absolutely naive to expect a politician not to lie. In 2015, British Liberal Democrat MP Malcolm Bruce told the BBC that if politicians were punished for telling lies, Parliament would be empty. After all, absolute truth doesn't exist in any context. We're human. The truth isn't always black and white, and whether a politician is a good guy or a bad guy isn't always clear-cut, unless you're talking about this guy.
Yeah, we do, not everybody.
But just because a person doesn't always tell the truth, it doesn't mean he or she lacks a moral compass. CNN published this piece by the writer John Blake back in 2013, but I think it's still pertinent today. In his article, Blake has this quote by Ed Yurovich, who's a former Washington lobbyist and author of the book Lying, Cheating, Scum, which says, every president has not only lied at some point, but needs to lie to be effective. Of course, he's not talking about the sort of lie that a lot of politicians are guilty of, the kind that's meant to cover up someone's crimes or protect one's political future or selfishly support one's campaign, like the notorious UK NHS lie perpetuated by UKIP in its pro-Brexit campaign.
Let's deal with your arguments. One of them is on the side of this bus. We send 350 million to Europe. We don't, and you know we don't. No, we don't. You know we don't.
No.
Admit that figure is grotesquely misleading at best.
I won't.
So what's the right kind of lie then? The right kind of lie is the untruth that can be forgiven as long as the leader puts the people first and delivers benefits for them. Take, for instance, this real-life drama that took place after Iranian protesters stormed the US Embassy in Tehran in 1979. 6 American diplomats managed to evade capture and hid out in the homes of 2 Canadian diplomats. Obviously, the US couldn't go in all guns a-blazing, right? So what happened was in 1980, the Canadian government helped the CIA carry out a covert rescue operation approved by then US President Jimmy Carter. Their cover was that of a Canadian film crew scouting a location in Iran for a Hollywood film, which meant that Canada had to issue fake passports for the ruse. Years later, Carter told CNN's Piers Morgan how it went down.
The Canadian government, because the Canadian government would not legally permit 6 false passports to be issued. So the Canadian Parliament had to go into secret session the first time in history, and they voted to let us use 6 Canadian passports that were false.
It was a success. The 6 got home, and because Carter had maintained that all the missing diplomats were being held hostage, the rescue came as a complete surprise to the public. Okay, so maybe this is an exceptional example. You want a more common one? Brookings Institution fellow Jonathan Rauch, in an article published by the New York Times, talks about how in 2013 Hillary Clinton admitted that she sometimes lies to the public about her true views. She said this is because politics is like sausage being made. It's unsavory, but we usually end up where we need to be. But if everyone's watching all of the backroom discussions about the deals, then people get a little nervous. Yes, all politicians have both a public and a private position. And yes, this is hypocritical, but Rausch believes such deceptions can be used for legitimate public purposes. He says it's just like how we have separate public and private faces. Say you're in a big meeting and your boss says something inaccurate or something you disagree with. What do? You nod your head and then quietly raise your concerns with your boss behind closed doors. Look, I'm not saying that it's okay to manipulate public ignorance. I'm not encouraging politicians to lie. I'm not telling you, hey, it's okay, as voters we should be complacent and just shrug off dishonesty. I'm just saying that, like it or not, politicians will lie. Sometimes it's for their own good. Sometimes it's for ours. Sometimes it's because we don't want to face the truth, like the fact that better services might mean higher taxes.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
So maybe we should care less about inconsistencies in the politicians' promises and more on what they're actually doing for us. Focus on the current issues at hand and on the policies that are being carried out and being promised. Are we benefiting as a nation? Are we progressing? Is our well-being being taken care of on a municipal level, a constituency level, and on a national level? How will we be affected by a leader's policies? Figure that out, and it'll make your voting decision a lot easier. Just saying.